John Carter stared at the notification on his datapad with disbelief. His name had been selected in the Galactic Confederation's Cultural Exchange Program, a euphemism everyone on Earth knew meant only one thing: he would be fighting in the infamous Soraxian combat arenas. The selection process was supposed to be random, but John suspected his military background had flagged him in the algorithm. After the disastrous First Contact War, humanity had been forced to accept harsh terms from the Galactic Confederation, including providing cultural representatives for their entertainment complexes. "Just my luck," John muttered, running a hand through his short brown hair as he packed his meager belongings. Earth's government had assured him the fights weren't to the death, at least not officially, but the survival rate for humans in the arena was suspiciously low. 2 days later, he found himself aboard the massive Confederation vessel, Harbinger, being processed like cargo alongside representatives from a dozen other species. Most of the aliens ignored the humans. Some watched with curiosity, others with clear disdain. The Dravaks warriors, with their stone-like skin and glowing red eyes, openly laughed when they saw John's group. "Look at the soft ones," one rumbled in broken standard. "They'd break so easily." John kept his face neutral, remembering his military training. Never show fear to a potential enemy. Never reveal weakness. The journey to Xorax would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for what might be his last battle. The quarters assigned to humans were small but clean. Their section housed 6 men and 4 women, all chosen from different regions of Earth. At dinner that first night, they sat together at a long metal table, picking at strange food that tasted like seaweed and chemicals. "I'm Susan Miller," said the woman across from John. She had short blonde hair and the hard look of someone who had fought her way through life. "Former Special Forces. You?" "John Carter. Marines, 5 years." Around the table, others introduced themselves. Most had military or combat sports backgrounds. The Confederation wanted fighters, not random civilians. "They'd been doing this for 6 years now," said Frank Wilson, an older man with graying hair and a scar across his chin. "Taking humans for their games. I've watched the broadcasts. No human has made it past the second round." The table went quiet. "Well," Susan said finally, "then we'll just have to be the first." Later that night, John couldn't sleep. He stood at the small viewport in his quarters, watching the blur of hyperspace. Somewhere ahead lay Xorax, a planet that had conquered half the known galaxy. Their arenas were famous across all worlds, drawing billions of viewers. A soft chime alerted him to a message on his datapad. Training would begin tomorrow at what would be 5 a.m. Earth time. The message included footage of previous arena matches. John sat on his bunk and played the first video. A human male faced off against a creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. The human never had a chance. He watched several more videos, analyzing the movements, looking for patterns, weaknesses. The aliens were stronger, faster, often armored naturally. But they were also predictable. They relied on their natural advantages, rarely showing strategy or adaptation. When John finally lay down to sleep, his mind was racing with ideas. The Confederation had chosen humans because they wanted easy victims to entertain the crowds. They expected fear and desperation. Instead, they would get something they didn't expect: human tactics, human adaptability, human ingenuity. John closed his eyes, a plan already forming in his mind. The Xoraxian arenas had never seen a human like him before, and if he had anything to say about it, they'd remember his name long after the games were over. The journey to Xorax Prime took 3 weeks in hyperspace. John spent most of that time in the ship's training facility, where he met Lisa Reeves, another human representative selected from the European Union. "They're pairing us against species 3 times our size," Lisa said during one of their sparring sessions. Her background as a mixed martial arts champion made her surprisingly optimistic. But they underestimate human endurance and adaptability. John wasn't convinced. The Dravaks have exoskeletons that can withstand small arms fire, and the Jother can regrow limbs. What exactly is our advantage? Lisa smiled grimly. They expect us to fight like animals. We'll fight like humans, with our brains. The training room was basic but useful. It had weights designed for various species, combat drones, and a small arena for practice fights. The humans quickly claimed a corner as their own, working together despite being from different countries. Humans are pack animals, Susan explained to a curious Nultarian who asked why they trained together. We're stronger as a group. John created a training schedule for himself and anyone who wanted to join. Mornings for strength and endurance, afternoons for weapons practice, evenings for studying alien physiology and fighting styles. Frank Wilson turned out to be a wealth of knowledge. He had been analyzing arena fights for years as a hobby. Each species has a weakness, he told the group. The Dravaks can't bend at the waist. The Taurians have poor vision in their lower right quadrant. The Krell overheat after intense activity. As days passed, the alien warriors began to watch the humans with growing curiosity. The humans didn't fight each other for dominance like the Krell. They didn't boast like the Taurians. They simply worked, planned, and prepared. One evening, a massive Jothar warrior approached John as he was reviewing fight footage. The alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, with gray-green skin and 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Human, the creature rumbled. You watch my people fight. John nodded. I do. You think this will help you survive? Knowledge is power, John replied simply. The Jothar made a sound that might have been laughter. Power is power, small one. But I respect your effort. He extended one massive hand. I am Kraz. John shook the offered hand carefully. John Carter. Your people are strange, John Carter. You lack natural weapons. Your skin tears easily. Your bones break. Yet you do not seem afraid. John considered his response carefully. Fear doesn't help in battle. It clouds judgment. Kraz nodded slowly. This is true. Perhaps there is wisdom in your species after all. As the ship approached Xorex Prime, tension grew among all the warriors. Training sessions became more intense. Arguments broke out among the more aggressive species. The humans kept to themselves, continuing their preparations. On the final night before arrival, John stood at the viewport again. The ship had exited hyperspace, and Xorex Prime dominated the view, a massive desert planet with sprawling cities visible even from orbit. Lisa joined him, her face reflected in the transparent material. Ready? As I'll ever be, John replied. They say the great arena can seat 2 million spectators, she said quietly. 2 million aliens watching us fight for their entertainment. John nodded. Then let's give them a show they'll never forget. The ship began its descent toward the planet's surface, the hull glowing red-hot as they entered the atmosphere. Below them waited the greatest challenge humanity had faced since first contact. A challenge that would either break them or prove to the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The processing center buzzed with activity as representatives from across the galaxy were sorted, measured, and evaluated. John watched as a hulking Taurian warrior was fitted with ceremonial armor, its 4 arms flexing impressively. A small green-skinned official approached John and Lisa. Humans? Yes. Fascinating. Such fragile bodies. The Xorexian coordinator, Visnik, examined them through compound eyes. You will be situated in the underdog quarter. Crowds enjoy watching species overcome their limitations. Their quarters were sparse but comfortable. The evening meal in the communal dining hall gave them their first real look at their competition. Warriors from across the galaxy sized each other up, some with curiosity, others with predatory interest. Don't make eye contact with the Krell, Lisa whispered, nodding toward a table of reptilian warriors. They consider it a challenge. John looked around carefully. The dining hall resembled a prison cafeteria more than anything else. Each species clustered together, protective of their own kind. The air smelled of strange spices and alien bodies, some pleasant, others decidedly not. Susan joined them, carrying a tray of food that looked vaguely like blue rice and purple meat. I overheard the guards talking. They're planning the first round matches tomorrow. They're putting us against mid-tier warriors. Not the bottom tier? John asked, surprised. No. They want us to lose, but they want it to look good. Give the crowd some entertainment. Frank sat down heavily beside them. The older man looked tired. The betting odds are already up on the arena screens. Humans are ranked last in survival probability. John took a bite of his food, which tasted better than it looked. Good. Let them underestimate us. After dinner, they were allowed to tour the training facilities. The Xeraxian Arena complex was massive, a city unto itself. Their guide, a bored-looking alien with translucent skin, pointed out different areas. Combat simulation rooms there, weapons selection hall there, medical facilities, which you'll likely need, over there. The weapon hall drew John's attention. Racks of strange devices lined the walls. Energy weapons, bladed instruments, projectile launchers. Some were familiar in concept. Others were completely alien. Are we allowed to choose our weapons? Lisa asked. The guide flicked a dismissive hand. Lower-tier species are assigned appropriate equipment. The arena masters will evaluate and select for you. That night, John couldn't sleep. The gravity on Xorax was slightly stronger than Earth, making his body feel heavy. Outside his small window, he could see the enormous main arena, lit up against the night sky. Even at this late hour, crowds moved around it like ants. A soft knock at his door startled him. He opened it to find Kraz, the Jothar warrior from the ship. Human, the massive alien said quietly. Tomorrow, they will test you. The matches. Kraz shook his head. Before that, they will evaluate your physical capabilities. They will expect weakness. Show them enough to satisfy, but hide your true strength. John frowned. Why are you helping me? The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. I have fought in many arenas across many worlds. The Xeraxians grow too comfortable in their power. They believe they understand all species. It would be interesting to see them surprised. With that cryptic statement, Kraz departed, leaving John to wonder if he'd just made an ally or if this was some kind of trick. Through his window, John could hear the distant roar of the crowd from a night match in the arena. Tomorrow, those crowds would be watching him, judging him, betting against him. John smiled grimly in the darkness. They were in for a surprise. Humans are slow, weak, and lack natural weapons. Their assigned trainer, Gurks, announced. The 4-armed Xeraxian seemed perpetually disappointed with his human charges. But the Emperor enjoys novelty, so we must work with what we have. The training was brutal. Each day started before dawn and continued until John could barely stand. They were taught to use various weapons, some familiar, others alien in design. John excelled with the energy staff, while Lisa demonstrated remarkable skill with the throwing discs. The arena's environment changes for each combat, Gurks explained. One day desert, next day swamp. Adaptability is survival. During one particularly grueling session, John collapsed, his muscles failing after hours of drills. Get up, human, Gurks demanded. In the arena, weakness means death. Give him a minute, Lisa snapped. Humans need recovery time. Gurks's compound eyes narrowed. Interesting. Most species push until collapse. You stop before your limits, then return stronger. Perhaps there is strategy in weakness. The training facility was vast and divided into sections. John and the other humans were restricted to the lesser species area, which still contained equipment beyond anything available on Earth. Gravity could be adjusted, holographic opponents could be programmed, and environmental conditions could simulate anything from Arctic ice to volcanic heat. John focused on mastering the energy staff, a 6-foot rod that could channel electrical energy through either end. The weapon felt natural in his hands, an extension of his body. He practiced for hours each day, learning how to strike precisely at the weak points of various alien anatomies. "You show promise, human," Gerks commented one day, his tone almost surprised. "Your species lacks strength, but your coordination is exceptional." Susan had chosen a different path, focusing on a pair of shock gauntlets that amplified her punching power tenfold. Frank, despite his age, proved deadly with a set of throwing knives that could curve in flight. The humans trained together when allowed, sharing what they learned about different weapons and fighting styles. They also studied recordings of previous arena matches, looking for patterns and weaknesses in potential opponents. One afternoon, they were brought to observe a live practice match between a Dravaks warrior and a Krell fighter. The battle was vicious, with both aliens using natural weapons, the Dravaks with its stone-like fists, the Krell with venomous tail strikes. "Watch closely," Gerks instructed. "These are mid-tier warriors. If you survive your first matches, you will face ones like these." John observed silently, noting how the Dravaks tired quickly despite its strength, how the Krell became slower after using its venom glands. "They're not fighting smart," he whispered to Lisa. "They rely too much on natural abilities." "That's our edge," she replied. "We've spent our history overcoming physical limitations." As the training days passed, something unexpected happened. The humans began to improve dramatically. Their bodies adapted to the higher gravity. Their reflexes sharpened. Their understanding of alien weaknesses deepened. Gerks noticed. During one training session, he dismissed the other trainers and addressed the humans directly. "You are scheduled for qualification matches in 3 days," he said. "The arena masters expect you to lose quickly but entertainingly." "And what do you expect?" John asked. Gerks's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "I expected nothing when you arrived. Now, I am uncertain. Your species adapts quickly. This is unusual." "We're full of surprises," Frank said with a grim smile. Gerks made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. "The arena has existed for 10,000 years. There are no surprises left." He paused, studying them. "But perhaps there are exceptions." That night, John practiced alone in their quarters, moving through combat forms with his energy staff. In 3 days, theory would become reality. In 3 days, he would either prove humans belonged among the stars or become another statistic in the arena's bloody history. The qualifying arena was smaller than the main stadium, but still held 30,000 spectators. John's heart hammered in his chest as he stood in the preparation chamber, energy staff clutched in sweaty palms. "Remember," Lisa said, adjusting his armor, "they're expecting a show. Give them one, but save your true capabilities for when it matters." The human contestants had been given light armor, black and red plates that covered vital areas, but left joints exposed for mobility. The material felt strange against John's skin, both metallic and organic, molding to his form yet harder than steel. 2 minutes until entry," announced a mechanical voice. "Competitor Carter, prepare for introduction." Lisa squeezed his shoulder. "You've studied the Viridian weaknesses. Hit the joint clusters, avoid the front claws." John nodded, focusing his breathing like he practiced. The chamber around him was cold and sterile, with walls that seemed to absorb sound. Through a small screen, he could see glimpses of the arena, an open circular space with various obstacles and terrain features. "The arena is set to wasteland configuration today," Susan said, checking a monitor. "Lots of rubble and hiding places. Good for your strategy." The announcement system blared. From the primitive world Earth, a representative of the species that dared challenge the Confederation. Human John Carter. A door slid open before him. John stepped out into blinding light, the roar of the crowd washing over him like a physical force. The arena was vast, filled with broken concrete structures, dead trees, and small hills, a post-apocalyptic landscape designed for drama. The crowd's reaction was immediate. A wave of jeers, laughs, and mockery washed over him as he stepped into the arena. His opponent, a Viridian scout with blade-like appendages, clicked its mandibles in what John recognized as their expression of amusement. The Viridian stood 7 feet tall, with a segmented exoskeleton and 4 arms ending in knife-like claws. Its head was insectoid, with large compound eyes that gleamed in the arena lights. "This match is qualifying round 6, boomed an announcer. "Victory by submission, incapacitation, or a meaningful pause, the ultimate conclusion." John knew what that meant. While deaths were officially discouraged, they certainly happened and were good for ratings. A buzzer sounded. The match began. The Viridian moved with startling speed, skittering across the arena on its 6 legs. John retreated, putting a concrete barrier between them, buying seconds to assess and plan. From his studies, John knew that Viridians were ambush predators. Fast, aggressive, but with poor endurance. They preferred to end fights quickly with overwhelming attacks. The alien circled, looking for an opening. John kept moving, forcing it to follow, leading it through difficult terrain that would sap its energy. Fight. Human. The Viridian clicked in broken standard, or die quickly. The crowd grew restless as John continued his evasive tactics. Booths echoed through the arena. This wasn't the quick slaughter they had expected. 10 minutes passed. The Viridian's movements became less fluid, its attacks more desperate. John had yet to strike a single blow, but his strategy was working. Finally, the alien made a mistake. Frustrated by John's evasions, it leaped over a barrier, committing fully to an attack. John had anticipated this move, studied it in recordings of previous Viridian fights. The combat was shorter than expected. The Viridian attacked with blinding speed, but John had studied its species. When it leaped for the killing strike, he dropped and rolled, using his staff to sweep the creature's legs. The subsequent electrical discharge temporarily paralyzed the Viridian. The alien crashed to the ground, its nervous system overloaded by the staff's energy pulse. It twitched violently, unable to rise. Silence fell across the arena, followed by confused murmuring. Humans weren't supposed to win qualifying rounds. The announcer seemed at a loss for words. The human competitor has incapacitated the Viridian warrior. Victory to Earth. John stood over his fallen opponent, staff ready in case the alien recovered. But the fight was over. He had won, and the arena didn't know what to make of it. "You were instructed to provide entertainment, not embarrassment," Visnik hissed during the post-fight debriefing. "The Viridian ambassador is demanding an investigation into illegal augmentations." John suppressed a smile. "I'm completely unmodified. Your scanners confirmed that. Then explain how a human defeated a Class 3 warrior." "We studied. We observed. We adapted," Lisa interjected. Her own victory against a Krell warrior had caused even more commotion. That's what humans do. The debriefing room was small and stark, with only a metal table and few chairs. Visnik paced around them, his green skin flushing darker with agitation. 2 silent guards stood by the door, their faces hidden behind reflective masks. 3 humans advancing to the second round, Visnik muttered. "Unprecedented. The betting systems have lost millions of credits." John exchanged a glance with Lisa. So that was the real issue. Money. The arena wasn't just entertainment. It was a massive gambling operation. "Perhaps you should adjust your odds," Susan suggested from her seat at the table. She had also won her match, defeating a Meltarian fighter with surprising ease. Visnik's compound eyes narrowed. "You were supposed to lose gloriously. That was your purpose, to show the superiority of Confederation species." "Sorry to disappoint," John said, not sorry at all. They were dismissed shortly after, returned to their quarters with instructions to prepare for the next round in 2 days. Word of the human victories had spread quickly through the competitors' areas. As they walked through the common spaces, aliens stared, pointed, whispered. "We've made an impression," Lisa said quietly. "Not all of it good," Frank replied. The older man had lost his match but survived. itself something of a victory. Some of these warriors don't like being shown up by primitives. In the dining hall that evening, the atmosphere had changed. The humans were no longer ignored. Some competitors gave them respectful nods. Others glared with open hostility. John noticed Kraz, the Jothar warrior, watching them from a corner table. When their eyes met, the massive alien inclined his head slightly, then stood and approached. "You fight strangely, human," Kraz said, his deep voice rumbling. "Not with strength or natural weapons, but with patience and strategy." "It's how we've always fought," John replied. "Against animals, against nature, against each other." Kraz considered this. "May I join you?" The table fell silent, surprised. It was rare for species to mix during meals. John nodded, and the giant alien sat down carefully on a reinforced bench. "The rulers of this arena have grown complacent," Kraz rumbled during their private meeting. "They arrange matches to favor certain outcomes, certain champions. Your unexpected victories disturb them." John considered this. "You're saying the games are rigged?" "All games with stakes this high are manipulated," Kraz replied. "But now they face something they didn't account for: human unpredictability." After Kraz left, the humans gathered in John's quarters to discuss this new information. "If the matches are rigged, they'll make sure we lose next time," Susan said. "Not necessarily," Frank countered. "The crowds loved the surprise of our victories. Ratings must have been huge. They might want to milk that for another round before eliminating us." Lisa nodded. "The question is, how far can we push this? How far can humans go in these games?" John stared out his small window at the main arena, glowing against the night sky. "All the way," he said quietly. "We can go all the way." The others looked at him with varying degrees of doubt and hope. "They've underestimated us from the beginning," John continued. "First contact, the war, these games. They think they know our limits." He turned to face his fellow humans. "Let's show them they don't." That night, as the others left, John sat alone planning for his next match. Outside, the twin moons of Helrax cast purple shadows across the alien landscape. He was no longer just fighting for survival or pride. He was fighting to change how the galaxy saw humanity. The great arena of Helrax was beyond anything John had imagined. The crowd's roar felt like a physical force as he entered the massive combat zone. Today's environment was set to primordial forest, massive trees, dense undergrowth, and numerous hiding places. His opponent was a fan favorite, Draz Kothar, an immense Jothar warrior with regenerative abilities and a notorious temper. The creature stood nearly 9 feet tall, its scared hide testament to countless victories. And now the unexpected qualifier, the human warrior who has somehow survived to reach our main event. Will his lucky streak continue, or will Draz Kothar add another species to his trophy wall? The crowd's laughter faded as John stepped forward, face impassive. He had spent hours studying recordings of the Jothar's previous fights. The creature relied on intimidation and raw power, but had poor stamina and even poorer patience. John gripped his energy staff tightly, feeling the familiar hum of power beneath his fingers. His light armor had been upgraded after his qualifying victory, still minimal by arena standards, but better protected at the joints and vital areas. The massive arena stretched hundreds of yards in every direction. Holographic technology and advanced terraforming had created a dense forest environment, with trees that towered 50 feet high. Mist clung to the ground, limiting visibility and adding to the primeval atmosphere. A deafening horn signaled the start of combat. Draz Kothar immediately let out a thunderous roar that shook leaves from the trees. "Come out and face me, human," the Jothar bellowed. "Die with honor, not hiding like prey." John had no intention of facing the creature directly. That would be suicide. Instead, he moved silently through the undergrowth, using the skills he had honed as a Marine on Earth. The forest offered countless opportunities for ambush and evasion. The battle was grueling. John used the environment to his advantage, forcing the massive alien to pursue him through increasingly difficult terrain. Each time Drazkothar cornered him, John would strike precisely at nerve clusters, then disappear again into the forest. "Fight me!" The Jothar roared in frustration after John landed a painful blow to its secondary nervous system and vanished into the mist. The crowd grows bored of your cowardice. But the crowd wasn't bored. The expected slaughter had transformed into something unexpected, a battle of wits and endurance. The laughs and jeers had given way to tense silence, broken by gasps when John would appear, strike, and vanish. Drazkothar began to tire. Its movements grew slower, its reactions duller. The Jothar's famous regeneration was being taxed by constant movement and the accumulation of small strategic injuries. An hour passed. The crowd's mockery turned to intrigue as the mighty Jothar began to slow, its regeneration taxed by constant small injuries and exhaustion. "This is unprecedented," the announcer's voice echoed. "The human appears to be employing a strategy of attrition against the mighty Drazkothar." John knew it was time for the final phase of his plan. The Jothar was visibly exhausted. Its breathing labored, its movements sluggish. Its legendary healing factor had been pushed beyond its limits by the constant need to repair dozens of precisely targeted wounds. He emerged from the undergrowth behind the creature, striking hard at the base of its spine, where Kraz had told him a vital nerve cluster was located. Drazkothar howled in pain, dropping to one knee. When John finally emerged from the undergrowth to deliver the finishing combination, a precise strike to the creature's secondary heart followed by an energy discharge to its neural center, the arena fell completely silent. The massive alien trembled, then collapsed face-first into the dirt. The neural discharge had shut down its conscious functions without killing it, a more difficult but more impressive victory. For several heartbeats, not a sound could be heard throughout the vast arena. 2 million spectators held their breath, unable to process what they had just witnessed. A human, a fragile, primitive human, had defeated one of the greatest champions of the arena. The silence was deafening. The silence didn't last long. As Drazkothar collapsed unconscious, the arena erupted, not in cheers, but in chaos. Some spectators howled in outrage, while others chanted in approval. The Emperor himself rose from his viewing platform, compound eyes fixed on the human warrior. In the months that followed, everything changed. John and Lisa became the focal points of a growing movement within the arena system. Other subjugated species began employing human tactics, focusing on strategy and observation rather than brute force. The betting systems that had enriched the Confederation for centuries were thrown into disarray. Underdogs were winning. Favorites were falling. "They'll change the rules soon," Lisa predicted as they prepared for the seasonal championship. She had survived her own path of victories, becoming a crowd favorite for her acrobatic fighting style. John nodded. "Probably. But we've already won something more important." "What's that?" "Respect." John checked his energy staff's charge. "And fear." The arena officials had indeed tried to contain the human disruption. They placed John and Lisa against increasingly dangerous opponents. They changed environments mid-battle. They even accidentally provided faulty equipment before matches. None of it worked. The humans continued to win, adapting to each new challenge. And the crowds, initially hostile, began to appreciate the skill and intelligence on display. Susan had been seriously injured in her third match but survived, becoming a trainer for newer human arrivals. Frank used his knowledge of arena politics to negotiate better conditions for human competitors. Together, they were changing the system from within. Most surprising was the growing alliance between humans and other species. Kraz had been the first, but others followed. Warriors who appreciated strategy over brute force, species who had been considered lesser by the Confederation. "You have started something dangerous," Visnik warned John after a particularly impressive victory. "The Emperor is not pleased with these changes." "Progress is often uncomfortable," John replied calmly. The final challenge came with the announcement of the seasonal championship, a team event where pairs of warriors would face the reigning champions, a duo of genetically enhanced Sorexian elites who had held the title for 6 seasons. Naturally, John and Lisa were selected to represent Earth. The night before the championship, they met on a balcony overlooking the arena complex. The alien city stretched before them, its strange architecture glowing under the purple moons. "Win or lose tomorrow, we've changed things," Lisa said. "The next humans who come here won't be seen as just meat for the grinder." John nodded. That was always the real fight. The championship arena was different, smaller, more intimate, designed for the crowd to see every detail of the combat. The environment was set to neutral, a flat surface with no cover or advantages for either team. When they entered the arena together for the championship bout, humans fighting as a team against the reigning champions, the crowd didn't mock or jeer. They watched in reverent silence as the warriors from Earth took their positions. The announcer's voice trembled slightly. The human representatives now entered the final challenge. This time, when John stepped into the combat zone, the silence felt like recognition rather than dismissal. Humanity had proven itself in the most visceral way possible to a galaxy that had underestimated them. The Sorexian champions entered from the opposite side, tall, powerful, bred for combat. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Their eyes showed no fear, only determination. John and Lisa exchanged a look, a lifetime of human evolution and adaptation condensed into a silent communication. They had prepared for this, studied their opponents, developed countermeasures for every possible attack. The starting horn sounded, and as the battle commenced, both John and Lisa knew that win or lose, they had changed how humans would be treated throughout the Confederation forever. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the species that had survived Earth.